It started in part with complaints about Ginny Thomas, who is the wife of Clarence Thomas, and lobbying work that she did for organizations that oppose that federal health care overhaul law. When Justice Thomas defended his wife this past weekend, the calls for his recusal got even louder. Congressman Anthony Weiner is a Democrat from New York, and he is leading the charge to get Justice Thomas to recuse himself. Congressman Weiner, thank you for being back on the program.
Well, so
what is the big deal about Justice Thomas and his marriage and his comments about supporting his wife?
Well, what it comes down to is a pretty clear federal law that requires judges and justices to recuse themselves whenever there is an appearance of impropriety, or not an appearance of impropriety as much as an appearance of a bias in the case.
Right.
And it has certain categories that you must recuse yourself, and one of them is if you or your household, your spouse, has any financial interest in the outcome. And we found out recently that Ginny Thomas, the spouse of Justice Thomas, has received more than $700,000 from organizations whose existence is based on making sure that the health care bill is ruled unconstitutional. And it got even worse this weekend, as you pointed out in your lead-in, because Justice Thomas basically said he agreed with his wife. So now it's pretty clear that that he's stated his bias in the case before it's reached him, and under the clear letter of the law, he must recuse himself.
I just want to respond to that because the first point, speaking to her interest as a lobbyist, what I'm told by Supreme Court experts, I covered the High Court for 3 years and I practiced law for 9, but what I am told by my Supreme Court expert contacts, and these are folks who are on the left, I want to state for the record, is that having any sort of a professional interest in a case, as his wife arguably does, is not grounds for recusal. It'd be a different thing if Clarence Thomas himself had stock in some company that was being affected, but they say this is not that. But I want to address your second point.
Well, before you go off that,
sure, go ahead.
Before you go off that, I'll read you from U.S. Title 28. Any justice must disqualify himself in any of the following circumstances. He, individually, or his spouse has a financial interest in the subject matter in controversy.
No, but she lobbies for groups who are opposed to this health care law.
And raises money doing it.
Right, but that's not the same as what these experts are telling me. So that's fine. I see your point.
117 law professors on the left and right have argued differently. And remember, this is about the perception.
No, not about that specific point. Let me get to your second point because I don't have a lot of time because you don't have a lot of time for me. So now you suggest that.
If you're stating something,
well, now you've suggested that the justice.
It's a matter of opinion.
You've suggested that the justice.
Aaron, it is.
All right. You suggested that Justice Thomas came out and spoke to a group. It was the Federalist Society, which is a group of conservative thinking lawyers.
No, not the Federalist Society.
Who was it then?
It was this weekend. It was at a conference of conservative activists, but we know very little about it except that where he spoke. But the Federalist Society is not the issue. You can talk about your views. Justices can speak whenever they want. Well,
what exactly did he say that has you upset? What exactly then?
What he said
I have a quote of him on tape, and I don't know if we're talking about the same one.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead. Use your shot.
All right. Will you tell me if this is it?
Okay, go ahead.
Take a listen to Justice Thomas.
I watched my bride, who in doing the same thing when she started her organization. She gave to give 24/7 every day in defense of liberty. And maybe that's why we're equally yoked, and we love being with each other because we love the same things. We believe in the same thing. That we are focused on defending liberty.
Is that it? I love my wife. We believe in the same thing.
Not the love I wife part. The point that she stands up for the defense of liberty, meaning the things she stands against are not in defense of liberty, and that she agrees with them. Listen, let me make this very clear. Justice Thomas' spouse has every ability to be able to earn her income and state her views wherever she wants. The Supreme Court has a very high obligation, as all courts do, to make sure there's not appearance that the case is pre-baked. If it's a lower court and you believe that it is, you can take it on appeal. Where can you take it with the Supreme Court? Which is why the test for recusal is so high, which is why Justice Kagan has recused herself in fully 50% of the cases this year, so that there's no perception
Well,
whatsoever.
she was the Solicitor General of the United States. That's a different story. She actually had an active role as counsel, which is also in the U.S. Code.
In many cases,
listen.
In many cases, she didn't.
Listen, just let me get to the next point.
Without letting. No. First, let me respond to your point.
No, I'm responding to your point, sir. You mentioned Justice Kagan. I'm just pointing out for the viewers so they know that she was the Solicitor General and therefore she had to. But let me tell you, sir. Let me tell you. But you're throwing everything at me, so I can't offer any response.
No, but I get an opportunity. You're doing an interview, so let me respond to your question.
Why don't you just do a soliloquy? Okay, you just take it away.
Okay, this is the way interviews work. You ask a question, then I get to answer.
Oh, thank you.
Your commentaries. when you put your commentaries at the end, they better be factually correct, and in this case, they aren't.
Was she or was she not the Solicitor General of the United States?
That was not the part that I'm taking exception to, if you let me finish my thought.
That. I remember covering her confirmation hearing to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we talked
I'm
about
not really
that.
sure. I'm not really sure what goes on in Fox's actually coverage, but we'll get that to another conversation.
Okay.
You said she had to recuse herself. She did not. She chose to in many cases where she had very little role in, simply because of the appearance was there. That's what Justice Thomas should do.
If you were a lawyer in the case,
I responded to something that you said.
If you were a lawyer in the case, you have to recuse yourself, even if you signed a brief.
She did not.
Even if you signed a brief.
She did not recuse herself only in those circumstances. That's the point.
But my point to you is Justice Thomas wasn't a lawyer in any of these cases.
That's
All
true.
he has is a wife who is a lobbyist. And what he said on that tape is that his wife. Can I have my turn?
Sure.
Okay. Because what he said in that tape is. I thought I could have my turn. I thought I was getting my turn now. Where's my turn?
Well,
what he said in that tape is that he believes in liberty and his wife believes in liberty. And what's happened in the past is other justices have come out and made speeches. I mean, we've had Justice Ginsburg speak to very left-leaning groups and actually speaking to groups that had cases on abortion and otherwise in front of her, and she refused to recuse herself because we have a trust in our justices. We believe that the justices on the left and the right, if there's an ethical obligation, that they will step down and they don't need politicians or the press pushing on them.
I know you like giving speeches, but you're doing an interview.
I got 20 seconds against a hard break. Go ahead.
What's the question?
Well, you
I heard your speech. What's the question?
I got to go, Congressman. Thank you so much for coming on. All the best to you.
Great interview. Aces.